Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the call. My name is Olasendi Omoriwo, and up on the call today again, we have our superstar Superman, Roger Norton, right? Roger, no, I'm talking to you actually. Yeah. So, Roger, welcome to the call again. So today, of course, we have our mentorship session, and I would really say that recently, I want to say something quickly so that I mean everybody can really learn from this call. I would really say that recently I've seen situations where I just see myself as, yeah, I'm not like a like I'm just in the product management journey like everyone else. But I'm saying that I've seen situations where I'm on this call and I forgot that I'm also here to learn. Do you get? Just because I anchor the program, do you get? But the truth is actually that it's easy to get lost, and that's what I want to say. But really, on this call, even if you're a senior product manager, just you can just learn from anybody. Really, you can learn from anybody. This is not even a Roger kind of thing. Even if it was not Roger, if it was a junior product manager that was talking, right, you can learn from the person. Because one thing is, we are not all I would say that experiences are quite unique and personal. Trust me, all through your product journey, you probably will not experience something that someone else would experience. It happens like that your kind of path is different. So that is one of the reasons why it's good to like learn. And just the same way you read books, right, it is the same way you learn. Because sometimes the journey of reading books is just like taking you 1,000 miles ahead, right, when you're reading books, that kind of thing, walking the journey of someone else while you are not even with them. And it is the same thing with learning, right, under people. So, or like listening to people talk, something you've not experienced, they just speak about it and that is it, and you just got it. You don't need to like go and learn like 12 hours, right, before you get that same concept. So that's the way I treat this meeting. I really want to just encourage everyone, try as much as possible, be open-minded, ask questions, listen, right, when Roger is explaining anything at all, right? And you can count on his experience, really. He has like years of experience. I can't even count. So, I mean, why won't I listen to that kind of person? Do you get? Not just the experience, but there's exposure and all of those things. So please, guys, yeah, welcome again, Roger, to the call. And yeah, we have started. Thank you. So I think I'm trying to catch up with something now, but I'm not too sure. So I'm not too sure there is a question right now to take. Princess, I don't know if I'm correct, but
Yeah,
there is
one from
Okay.
Jamela.
Chimela. That's the first question. That's the question.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so there's this question from Chimela that says, why does it seem hard getting a PM internship role? Yeah, Roger, I'm sure you must have that question like 70 times.
Yeah, I've answered this question a bunch. The bottom line is it's supply and demand. There's a lot of people trying to go for entry-level roles. There's only so many roles. But what makes it even harder is that product management, if you don't have much experience, product management is quite difficult for someone to give a lot of responsibility to somebody with very little experience. And product management is often the one creating the vision or the strategy or defining what we need to work on or why we need to build it. And there's a lot of stuff you'll start in just sort of writing Jira tickets or user stories or those sort of things, or writing PRDs, but those are typically low value and they're quite easy to outsource. And it's not like a senior person can't do those. So it's a lot of competition, a lot of people, and it's very difficult to find a way to stand out when the tasks aren't particularly complex. So normally my advice is just to someone is to try and find a niche or differentiator or something that you really enjoy. Like product management is such a broad spectrum, and you can normally find some kind of a toehold that you can become a bit of an expert at, or a bit more of an expert at, that you can bias it. So it could be in analytics and growth and customer feedback and review and the customer discovery questions. It could be in engineering. It could be like whatever you are, whatever leaning you have, double down on that to try and stand out from everybody else who has very little experience. And you might get hired for certain roles that need a little bit more of that. You'll just be that little bit further ahead of everyone else. So I don't have, it's not a great answer to the question because it's just very competitive. But that would typically be my advice, is try and find some way to differentiate yourself in one of the many product skills.
Olasende, I don't know if she's on, so we can't ask her if that answered her question. Maybe just do a quick sweep of the room to check if she's on the call. I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah,
see her.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Sorry, I was trying to speak before, but I didn't know you guys were not hearing me. I'm not sure Chimila is on the call. Chimila, are you on the call? Just in case you came with someone else's name. I think she's not on the call. So, Princess, yeah. So, I mean, I hope that. So the point now is maybe what we are going to be doing henceforth is that just in case, once the recording is like up, whoever it is that asks questions, so we just get the list of those people who ask questions, then we try to like tag them on Slack so that they can go back to it wherever it is that we uploaded it, so that they can just refresh. Okay. So that's the first question. I'm trying to look into the chat now for the second question.
Cool. Anybody who has a question, feel free to throw it in the chat now. Otherwise, put your hand up and we can unmute and you can ask it directly.
Yeah, and if you don't want to, of course, you can drop a question in the Q&A, what is it called, section. If you still want to reach out to me on Slack, but I think that's going to be too long right now, so I will not advise that. You can also do that. So please, any question, guys? Any question from anyone at all? Okay, Odira, please go ahead.
All right, so I think I'll just talk based on what we started initially. So I know you had random just said, Roger, you had random just said you try to talk to startup founders about pushing their ideas on people. How, for us that are working, I think a lot of us work with startup founders too, do you have any advice for us? Is there something that we need to do to convince them? Of course, I have an amazing boss, I have to say, but but for the rest of the world,
Please, can you tell us where you work? Just
what's your boss's name? I'm gonna find him on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I think why my boss has a different mindset is that he worked in foreign organizations. He worked in the US for a very long time. So he has this really he's not a typical Nigerian-minded man. That's all I can say. All right, then. So Roger, what's your advice for us?
Yeah, so I mean, it's hard to. So my situation is slightly different. We are an investor in the startups. So we have invested in 57 companies to date. And so with the founders I'm working with, we've actually given them a few $100,000 in cash. And part of that value means they have to put up with me for 6 months. And so I am coming in as an expert, as an investor, interested in like growing their business. And so we've got a fair bit of methodologies and frameworks that we lean on helping them identify what it is they need to focus on at any point in their journey. And so I have quite a lot of those benefits that when I say, hey, you need to be doing this, they generally tend to listen to me because I'm coming with a whole bunch of quite a bit of weight behind it. But beyond that, what I often find is founders, you need to try and put yourself in the founder's shoes and say, like, what is the founder actually trying to achieve? Like, what is most success? What does success look like for them? And the short answer is they're looking to increase their valuation. They're looking to raise funding, increase valuation, and the easiest way you do that is by removing risks in the business. So if you think about what are the biggest risks, you're starting to look at of the validation curve of, as you're trying to remove the risk, like, do customers actually want this? I mean, it's that desirability, feasibility, viability thing. Do customers want it? Do customers actually have a problem? Is there a potential solution to that problem? If I build a solution, will they buy it? How do we know we might buy it? How do we know we might build it? What is the minimum we can build? If we ship it, will people pay? If they pay, will they pay enough to make this a viable business or get our unit economics right? Can we hire a team? Like, all of those are risks in a business, starting with the really biggest ones around desirability, then moving into the feasibility ones, which are medium-sized risks, and then the viability risks are generally later stage. So depending on how mature the business is or how far it is along the validation curve, we focus on different metrics and different experiments to run at that point. Having said that, what I do try and optimize for with my founders is to get to aha moments. how do I create a situation or ask probing questions for them to suddenly click and see value in what it is. So normally what I'm looking for is, where is something that they're taking a leap of faith that they don't realize, or that they're making an assumption that they don't realize is actually an assumption. And so it might be, oh, customers will definitely want this. This is what we need to build. And then it's like, well, if customers really want it and it's that obvious, it's really easy to test. Let's go chat to 5 customers. And you go chat to 5 customers and say, well, actually, out of the 5 customers we chatted to, only 2 wanted this. The other 3 wanted this other thing. And then all of a sudden, you shifted the conversation away from what you're trying to build and actually highlighted the assumption that they've made in that leap of faith. And so a lot of times when you're working with founders, and that's why I love to hear people's stories from in the trenches of how do you convince a ogre culture, or how do you convince a boss telling you what to do, why that might not be the right thing. And often they have a ton of experience and they're leaning on that experience and they just intuitively know this is something that needs to be built. There are plenty of great products that have been built like that, but too often they don't know what those assumptions are, and they're not taking them for granted. And by making those assumptions clear or showing the alternatives and helping them make better decisions is a way to do it. So the way you do it, by sort of deflecting for a little bit until you've got enough data to be able to show, what you're actually doing there is finding the data that actually invalidates their initial assumption that their reasoning was based on. So if you hear them, empathize with them, understand why they think this is the right thing to build, and then on the background, go and check that quickly and go and find if there are holes in what they're doing. Try and collect the data. People often use the phrase like, oh, you need to be very data-driven, and very rarely actually does insights come, as Princess says, very rarely do insights actually come from, or new product ideas come purely from the data. It normally comes from a gut feel or an instinct that you then validate with data. So I always say, like, it's far better to be instinct informed and then validated with data. So you decide, like, by looking at the data, by chatting to customers, you'll be like, they keep saying this thing. I wonder what the problem actually there is. Let me dig a little bit deeper. And then you go and find the data to say, oh, this is the problem. This is what we should be building. So it's not, you can't just be looking at tons of data and expect to, like, oh, the data will find the answer. It's a lot of the times you're just immersing yourself in the problem and then, like, going, oh, hold on, my intuition is telling me there's something here. Let me go and see, let me ask very specific questions of the data, and you can normally get much more specific answers. So yeah, to answer that question of how I do that with my founders, is I try and find, there's normally a leap of faith or an assumption baked into their logical steps of, like, what is it you want to build? Why do we want to build that? Why do we want to build that? What's that based on? And then what is the data that'll validate or invalidate each one of those steps? And then I normally try and find them. And further down the line you get, like, will people pay for this if we build it? Like, that's a really difficult thing to test, because you have to actually build it and ship it and get customers before you can even know the answer to that. But there's a lot of proxies that you can see, like pricing proxies. What are they currently paying for things? Let's put up a mock landing page and see if people click through. Let's buy, I don't know, like $20 or $50 worth of Facebook ads and send them to a landing page and see how many people convert on this value proposition that we're so sure about. And if nobody converts, maybe we should test a little further. So it's trying to find ways of undermining that. Or it's actually just jumping into what is their intuition and then going to find the data that backs it up or doesn't back it up, because our intuition can also be wrong sometimes. So those are 2 tactics that I would recommend, that I've used in some way, shape, or form. But like I said, my situation is often different, where I am the ogre.
Thank you for your feedback and answer. I like it. I like the aha question. I think I should be looking for that. Yeah.
We call them aha moments or penny drop moments. So, like, often, I had one just the other day when the founder hadn't shipped something in like 6 months, and he's a month or 2 into the program, and I was like, well, what about this? What about that? He didn't get it, and eventually I did a rant about agile product development and why agile product development is so much more valuable, and how much missed value you incur by trying to ship too big. And I gave him a 10-minute rant on why this is. And he was like, oh, okay, yes, I get it. And he showed me the product. And I was like, what's that doing there? He's like, oh, but that came with my framework. I'm like, no, it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Get it out. Just ship the core value, ship the minimal thread, ship the core value. And eventually he was like, oh, I totally get this. Oh, I see that. That makes so much sense. And now he's 2 weeks later, he's actually getting the product live. End of this week, he should get the product live that he hasn't got live for 6 months. Because I gave him a rant 2 weeks ago and basically told him he's doing it all wrong and he should change his frame of reference. And it's suddenly finally clicking for him how shipping and the value of shipping, you start seeing how much value you're actually leaving behind. So it's just
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Udera. Thank you very much. Thank you, Roger, for that wonderful answer. So I'll be moving on to another question. So there's a question here from Naomi. So Naomi says, I'm currently an associate product manager with a startup looking to start applying for PM roles soon. What other skill do I need?
A lot. I mean, a lot and a little. It depends on what you want to try and be. So going back to what I said a bit earlier is, product management is such a broad sector. Everything from sales, operations, like growth, marketing, technical product management, to Scrum, to Agile, to product strategy, to product testing, customer discovery, UI, UX. Like it sort of touches on all of those pieces. So when you're starting out your career, you can't be everything. You've got to pick a sector or I want to be a growth PM, or I want to be a technical PM and work with tickets and dev teams and that sort of thing, and run Scrum sprints and that sort of, be a Scrum master. Or I want to move in. I come from customer service, so I want to be on customer discovery and customer feedback loops and collecting data, and how do we do that more effectively and get NPS scores to make better decisions. So normally, very few people come straight into product. From product, a lot of people come from something else. You've done a little bit of something else on the side. You've worked in a call center, or you've done project management, or you've done some, like a little bit of coding, or whatever that base is. I would recommend building around that. So Naomi, whatever you'd say, out of all of those things I've sort of mentioned, out of that spectrum, what are you most, what is your grounding, and then what is adjacent to that, and looking at what skills come up adjacent to that specific skill set, and then you can look at building out your career. So typically, when you're a junior, you should focus your career on standing out, on building valuable skills that are differentiated from everybody else. Then when you get to the middle of your career, you need to get broader. You need to be able to do a little bit of everything. And then as you get more senior, you'll normally start to narrow your career again and say, okay, I'm an innovation product manager, or I'm a technical product manager, or I'm an enterprise product platform product manager, or whatever those specialities are. I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago on the specialities in product management and how to think about that. So that's when you're senior, you start narrowing your product experience again, and you start moving up into management. You start moving to certain layers. So when you're junior, you focus. When you're a mid, you start going broad and build out that breadth of experience. And then as you start getting more senior, you should start focusing again. So that's my high level advice on career paths and PM. Naomi, does that answer you in a very roundabout way?
Thank you, Richard. Naomi, are you still on the call? Does that answer your question? Well, I want to guess that answers your question. I think one other thing I would just add is that from what Roger said is that, Roger was talking about getting into the middle of your career and trying to just broaden a little bit, try your hands on so many things, trying to just widen your capabilities and all of that. That is, I think, from what I've learned, I would not say from my experience, because I'm not yet but from what I've learned, actually, I can see that when you get to the senior level, right, one thing you would always get to experience is that you get to experience that you need to be niched. That's the first thing. So you, like Roger said, you need to either choose to be a platform product manager, or an enterprise product manager, or just any kind of product manager that you want to be. Now, in that space, right, there will always be situations where you need to borrow from something quite different. So, the fact that you're a platform product manager, don't even use that. Maybe the fact that you are, say, a good product manager, it doesn't mean you will not have to borrow from some of the other things you've learned, right? When you are in your mid-level journey, right? So it's just good to always like grow your capabilities when you can. Then when you get to that top and you are focusing on one thing, if you need to always branch out to just maybe quickly fix something or do something in another space, right? You would always be able to just tap into some of those skills that you already honed initially, right? Do them, then move on, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add. Okay, so the next question is, I think you want to say something. Yeah, you want to share something?
I'm sharing my screen quickly. So this is for example, this is a matrix that I use with my team. I've zoomed out a bit, but I'll zoom in now quickly. But there's effectively 4 levels. So an associate can partake, a specialist can do narrow delivery, so a certain subset of that set of skills. A senior specialist can fully deliver, a lead can instruct others, and a principal is sort of an external thought leader in that. And then in each of these verticals, this is in our context, it's quite broad, but there's fundraising, business strategy, partnerships or B2B sales enablement. So sales strategy and sales enablement, quite different. Then there's growth loops and channels, paid media. So this is growth loops and like growth strategy. This is paid media, like how to run Facebook ads, how to run LinkedIn ads, that sort of thing. Customer research around value proposition development and questionnaires. Then you move into brand design, UX, product management, which is like strategy, road mapping, agile ways of work, those sort of things. Technologists being able to do low-code prototypes, software engineering, and then full-on software development. So software engineering is like architecture and things, and development is actually writing code. And then what I do, so this is my various different team members of looking at, sorry, I've just got not that one, get back here. Of just getting, so each of my team members, I rated them sort of like how strong. So I would say like I'm probably at principal level at product management and customer research. And so looking at how do I map out what their career growths would look like, either by going deeper in a certain vertical or by going broader into more adjacent things. So you can see Kate is a growth one on our growth team. So she does research, customer research or customer development, paid media, and growth channels and loops. So where she's really an expert at. Jax is a bit more like me, a bit more broad, a bit more in the B2B experience than I do, but I'm a bit stronger in the PM and business strategy side than her. Our developers are light blue and dark blue. So I started Adam as a product designer. So he sits quite strongly in here, and he can either level up by becoming even better at brand and design, or by moving into product management, or moving into sort of paid media and experiments. So that's like an example of just some of the ways you could think about how you can grow your career and where you would base it on. I also dropped the link in the chat to the article I'm talking about product specialties, if anyone's interested.
Okay, yeah. Thank you for that, Rija. Yeah, so moving on to the next question from Faith. So there is this question: what is the distinct difference between product review, product case study, and product teardown? Oh, wow, and product thinking. Rija, you have work to do.
I don't know. I'll give you my perspective. I don't know what context you're meaning these in. Faith, I don't know if you want to just share, if you have context. Like for me, you would use these in quite different contexts. Like a product case study or product teardown is kind of used in interviews. Product thinking is a way of work, and a product review is kind of an analysis or competitor analysis. Do you want me to dig into details there, or am I kind of on the mark and you want more details, or do you want to provide more context and put me back on track?
Faith, I think it will make sense if you can just shed more light, so that I mean, questions like this are broad, so you don't want to like just allow Roger to start talking and not. Don't let me wonder. Okay. So can you just unmute and shed more light, if possible? Faith Ogundayo.
Oh, she can't talk, but she'll type here. Okay. Faith, while you're typing, I'll just unpack some of the easy ones that I mentioned. So a product review is really just an analysis. If it's in an e-commerce store, a product review is literally a customer reviewing your product. I think in a product management sense, it would be to like review a competitor's product. So looking at what sort of features they have, what are the strengths, what are their weaknesses, trying to infer what their strategy or customer segmentation is. So trying to think about like how do the people think who build this product, and then normally to the extent where you can evaluate, well, how does our product stack up against them. You can also review a service provider's product like this. There's a API, SMS API that you can review that product to try and see whether you want to buy it or not. So I think there's a couple of different contexts around product review. Product case study and product teardown. A product case study, I would normally, like we do in interviews with a case study, where we give them a problem or for this kind of business, build me a product strategy and a roadmap, and then they actually create a case study. A lot of what I do is I say, if a startup is pitching to you with this business, in fact, one of my favorite interview questions is, we work quite a lot with early stage founders and what they do. So the question I throw out is, a scientist has come to you who's developed a teleportation device, so be able to teleport things. And they want you need to help them identify how to productize it and take it to market. They're purely technical. They don't know anything about the business strategy. That's what you're there for. How would you approach that? Like, what questions would you have for them? And so that's kind of like a case study of thinking, well, how would I go through this? What tools would I use? How do I actually go and implement what that looks like? So that's like how you think about a case study of what it is, or breaking down a new feature development, an imaginary feature or something. A product teardown will be an analysis of an existing product. So do a product teardown of our current product suite, and diagnose which customer segment we're selling to, and then come up with one or two suggestions on how we could improve it. It's sort of an analysis of a specific product, whereas a product case study is normally an imaginary product or imaginary scenario. And then product thinking, I'm assuming, for product thinking, I think I'm putting that in the same bucket as product sense, which is a way to think about products or have a gut feel for how to move a product forward or how to understand a product and its market better. Product thinking is very often thinking about, like, how do we productize something? So if we have this problem, how do we test and iterate solutions? How do we find a solution? When we find something, how do we build it? How would a customer use it? How would we launch it? How do we think about the various stages of product in doing that? Product sense is kind of that, but applied to much more uncertainty and unknowns of just looking at masses of data and getting a gut feel for where you should get the answer. Product sense is something you can develop, but it's typically something that comes later in your career. It's hard to start with product sense. So as a PM, we need to do a product case studies, some product teardown. So a product case study will typically be something that they'll give to you. They'll give you a question in an interview and say, in this scenario, add this feature, or for our agent network software, develop a new feature. And then you would have to go and think about, well, what features might agents need to use? What is their current product? How would I add that feature in? And it's sort of imaginary PRD and hypotheticals on how a product might look. If you DM me on Slack, I'll show you an example I used for a product interview a couple of years ago for TopTal, which is a product consultancy agency, an international one. It was for quite a senior level, but I take the Sonos speaker and add a new feature of family sharing into Sonos features, all the way through to like specs and rundowns and cost analysis and revenue and cost breakdowns and comparisons and a whole bunch of stuff. So that would be a product case study. A product teardown is just analyzing something that is already there in my world. Like I said, this language is a little bit fluid, but I would say, like, do a product teardown of Uber's products. So then you go there, what are Uber's products? What are their features? Who are their different customer bases? What is the value proposition that each of them offers? How do they charge? How do they make money? Like looking at, like, just tearing it down, and like if you brought a new car home and you ripped it apart to see how to try and reverse engineer how it worked. That for me would be a product teardown. Faith, let me know if that doesn't answer your question.
I want to believe that answers Faith's question. Yeah, thank you so much for the response as well. So I think there is actually a follow-up question from Bankole Messi. That with regards to what Naomi asked initially that you answered, which has to do with Naomi being an associate product manager looking to apply for PM role. What are the skills she need? So there is this follow-up question from Bankole Messi that says that what are the technical competencies required of a product manager, especially for a tech startup that is trying to structure a tech team, basically? What are the technical competencies? I think that's the takeaway from the question.
Yeah. I'm going to answer your question a little differently to what I think you're trying to ask. Or let me get clarity on that maybe. Are you wanting to know, as a PM working in an early stage tech team, the tech team's a little bit of a mess, how can you add more value? Or are you looking at what makes someone a technical product manager and what skills do you need to be able to be a technical product manager? Nicole, I don't know if you want to unmute and just ask that question.
Sorry, what do you say, Princess?
I was asking if the person is on the call because sometimes when people say technical product manager, they don't mean the literal meaning of technical product manager. They mean these technical skills, like the skills I would need to be a product manager. I mean, I could just be a project manager, but what kind of technical skills would put me apart? So the person has to actually tell us, is that what you mean? Or you mean technical PM, dealing with API integrations, like reviewing code, etc., whatever your company gives you as technical. Is that what you mean? So the person's on the call.
Yeah, Bankole, she just asked there what makes, she asked in the chat, what makes a technical PM. So a technical PM is someone, by my definition, a technical PM would normally be someone who can go deep on a specific technology. So it's somewhere where you need to have an understanding of the technology in order to be an effective product manager in that space. So an example would be blockchain, or if you're building an NFT marketplace, if you're not technical to the point of understanding how distributed ledgers work, understanding how the Byzantine general problem, understanding what smart contracts are, or how Ethereum network works, it's going to be incredibly difficult for you to actually design an effective NFT platform when you don't actually understand those principles. So depending on what the vertical is, you may need, like in AI or machine learning, if you're building an AI machine learning tool, to understand the constraints of AI, and you don't have to be able to write Juniper notebooks and actually deploy machine learning code, but you have to understand the process. You have to understand how the bits click together. You have to understand the shortcomings of like, how do neural nets actually get built? Like, have you do a course in that, or just look at a couple of YouTube videos, understand the pattern and understand where errors can be created and can actually be amplified through the thing, because it's very difficult to build an interface that leverages AI when you don't actually understand the shortcomings of that particular AI, or of the way that your team is deploying and running those AIs. So for me, those types of roles would require a certain level of technical understanding. Now, when I talk about like technical PMs, it doesn't mean you need to be able to write the code. You're not a developer. But what I often do, and if you are in a startup working in teams, is I often ask the developers to draw the software stack. Like, what is the software stack that you're using? What is the database layer? What is the backend web application layer? What APIs are you using? What kind of authentication are you using? What API services do we integrate into that? Which are the front ends? How do they speak? Are they separate apps? Is it a monolithic app? Is it a set of microservices? Being able to ask those questions means that you're going to understand the constraints and the feedback, and you're going to be able to co-create solutions with your developers and work a lot closer with your developers. When you don't need to know how to write the code, but you kind of need to know when they talk about, oh, the authentication of this API, the token expires. You kind of need to know what that language is for you to be able to have a proper forgot password or an auto log out to, like, hey, why does this app suddenly stop working? Well, it's because your token's expired and we haven't designed a check in the app to kick you out and redirect you to a page, ask you to log in again. So being able to understand some of those technicalities of how your team works and how the software is built will enable you to build a better solution and design a better solution on the front end, and brief the designers and understand why they're working on these 3 tasks, why trying to build this one page takes 5 days versus building another page might take 1 day. And it's because technically this is really easy because it's just repurposing something that exists, but this other feature is a completely new build that doesn't exist anywhere else in the app. So being able to have those kinds of conversations with your developers is what would make you a technical PM. The best way to do it is to understand technical architectures and start by just learning that. You can YouTube or Google very easily on what is Amazon's architecture, or what does a Amazon architecture typically look like, or a boilerplate a GCP, Google Cloud Platform setup. What does that look like? What do most applications look like that work with Firebase? How does that integrate? Like, try and find 1 or 2 names of the technologies that your devs are using, and then just go and do a bit of reading and understanding how does that technology actually fit in, how does it click together. So when you're looking at upskilling and becoming more technical, if you want to get closer to the developers to help understand their constraints and design better solutions within those constraints, being able to understand the high-level context of the world. I'm not talking about writing code. I'm not talking about deployments and CI/CD pipelines and syntax. I'm just talking about structurally, how does it all click together? And I found that getting a good understanding of that helps us build way better solutions and helps to build trust with the developers way quicker, because I'm not wasting their time. When they push back to say this task is going to be really massive, I can go, hold on, it's massive because you're using that service. What happens if we did it this way? Would that be a lot quicker? And they're like, oh, yes, absolutely. It's like, okay, great. Well, let's use this solution rather. So that's the level of technicality that I would say as you need as a PM, and the types of skills you should build. Cool.
I want to quickly add something. I just from a personal experience, right? I started getting into technical stuff early this year. So one thing I did with my engineers was I let them know plain blank that I don't understand what they are doing, and I needed to understand to avoid me asking unnecessary questions, because engineers don't like when you ask them some kind of questions. I also told them that they should not assume that I don't understand before sharing it with me. Share it with me, at least share a high level explanation of what you are doing. I will go further and research. But if you do not keep me in the loop of what you are doing, I will keep on asking irrelevant questions, and all of us will sit down in that meeting. So let's save each other time. So that's one thing I did with them. And so anytime there's a bug fix, I'll ask them, how did you solve it? Can you tell me what you did? Or we're about to deploy this. What are you doing differently this time? I think that's another way to build a good rapport with your engineering team.
Yeah, the phrase I use is talk techie to me. So when the developer's like, oh, I don't know how to explain, it's like, just tell me the techie version of what you did, and I'm going to write down all the words I don't understand, and I'm going to go Google them, I'm going to research that, and then come back and check, is this what you meant, and is this why? To show my understanding. It builds a ton of trust with developers.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, everyone. Let me just move to the last question, I believe. This is just 7 minutes to the end of the call. So yeah, there is this question here. Hello, my name is Cyrus. I'm sure most of us here.
Sorry, Olasen, there's a question from Ridwan, but I don't know where the context is. He said, I would like to ask what is required for a beginner. I don't know.
I skipped it, sorry.
I don't know who he's trying to attach it to. Maybe a question that was already answered.
Ridwan, are you on the call, please? Let me look for Ridwan. Ridwan is not on the call. He's not on the call. So
just go ahead with Cyrus.
Yeah, okay. Let me go ahead with Cyrus. So hello, my name is Cyrus. I'm sure you must have. I'm sure most of us here. What is product review? What is a PRD? What are user personas? What are design thinking, and so much more. So some of us know what they mean and how it helps in bringing the product/feature to life. I will go straight to the point. Oh, wow. When are these documentations needed? And at what point do we need to make a persona? A/B testing, design thinking, etc. It gets overwhelming for a beginner. Yeah, thank you. Roger,
That's like...
Roger, you have 5 minutes to play a masterclass on.
Great. Okay, let's see how well I do. Please drop in the chat on a score of 10 how I pull this off in 5 minutes. Okay, so I'm sharing my screen again because I'm going to use some frameworks to lean back on. So maybe before I get there, this is my a template of frameworks that we pull on. So you were talking about user personas. There's a customer segment profile, hypothesis mapping or unpacking interviews, looking at hypothesis tracking and experiments, test cards, value proposition canvases, going into business model canvases, iteration design, pricing workshops, service design templates, retros, website templates. Like I've got all these things that you mentioned are kind of here and more. I mean, if I zoom out, there's a whole bunch of stuff and shorthands and workshops that we run and that sort of stuff. So I'm not going to go into any one of those individually, but what I will highlight for you is, so this is another thing that I've kind of been working on. I've actually got an article in draft that I'm hoping to push out in the next week or so, of looking at a startup journey map. And this is kind of true for any idea validation and the process of any new idea validation and commercialization. So the opportunity is, so it kind of goes opportunity, launch, optimize, scale, expand. And in the beginning, what you're focusing on is a potential market, which is identify the problem space, map the stakeholders, discover their needs, generate concepts, and then get to a point where you have a clear value proposition, yes or no. And so you'll use stakeholder mapping. Here you'll use customer interviews and hypothesis tracking and experiment test cards. Generating concept, you'll use prototyping techniques and reviews and business model canvassing, or those sorts of things, like identifying what might we solve for. Identifying the problem space is very much the design thinking, double diamond of divergent, convergent, which kind of maps to this as well, of looking at problem spaces. So each of those tools and techniques and frameworks you can use at a specific stage. But the important thing to focus on is not the framework for the use of the framework. It's not like, oh, we have to use design thinking. It's like, no, we have to identify a problem space, map stakeholders and discover needs. Design thinking will help you do those 3 things. Let's pull up some design thinking templates and tools to help unpack that. And so the first point for me is getting to a point of a clear value proposition and solution. Like, have we done rapid prototyping or testing to work out what will actually solve a validated customer's problem, so that we have some kind of evidence to know that we're solving a meaningful problem and that the solution we propose will actually solve that problem. Once you know what it is you need to build, you then move into the launch phase. So into your initial market, you deliver the core value proposition to the initial customers. And so you're looking for a small number of users, 5 to 10 users using the core problem. So what is the minimum we can build that will get users, get something that people will log into and use? And at this point, you're focusing on activation rate and engagement. So how do we get people to engage or to activate with the product, i.e. to get to the moment of value or the aha moment using my product once they've signed up and gone through 1 or 2 steps, and then land on the dashboard and go, oh, that's useful. Like how many people can we get to that point? How quickly can we get people to that point? And then how many times do they come back and keep getting that value? And that's kind of shipping the core value, getting the users, and invariably you've shipped too little or you've shipped the wrong thing, because that's almost always the case. So then the next step is to work out, how do we need to improve the product? So do customer interviews, watch customers using the product, reviews, that sort of things, and ultimately trying to improve the product to get them to a point where they would actually pay you for it, and pay you something. So get a small number of users to pay you something. And so repeat customers who love you is kind of a point that you're trying to get to here. If you haven't got that, either go back and get different users or keep improving the product until you get there. And so then once you've got that, you then move into an optimize phase. And so in optimize, you've kind of got a small trickle of users who love you and keep using you, but now you need to build this engine of growth. You need to get to product market fit, which is the end of this. And so you want to start improving retention. So how do we get people to stay longer? And these arrows, this one's slightly different because you might jump between them, do a little bit of acquisition and then a little bit of retention and then improve your tech and then go back and do some more acquisition and then need to improve your ops. So you kind of move a bit more around the business. But here you're really optimizing for a growing number of users, so acquisition rate or month-on-month growth, month-on-month user growth. You're looking at engagement rates of all those people. Like, we need to know that there's more people coming into the product all the time. We need to know that those people are actively using the product or engaged in it, and then we need to know that they're not churning. So what is our retention rate? And you need your retention rate between 20 or 40%, typically for a B2C product. And when you have those three things, can you say you have product market fit? So you need to go back and keep improving or tweaking or improving what you've got as a business in order to get to product market fit, which is when you have the triangulate of those three things. Growing top line users who actively engage your product, so active engagement rates, and decent retention, so 20 to 40% retention rate. So 20 to 40% of the people who sign up for your product keep using your product. So there's always a drop-off curve, and that curve needs to plateau somewhere between 20 and 40% of all users, ideally within 60 or 90 or 120 days. So that's kind of the things you need to focus on. So in each of those, there are tools and techniques and frameworks and customer personas and all that sort of stuff. But that's kind of the early stage product or idea testing that you need to get to. That was my 6 words. Sorry, thanks, Alessandro.
Bravo. That was a great masterclass. You delivered, actually. You did it. Thank you. The question was actually a lot, right? So I was trying to see how that would play out in 5 minutes, and you really, really dealt with it. Thank you so much, Roger. I mean, it's so good to see that you can always be trusted whenever you're on the call.
Always be trusted to win it.
Okay. So thank you very much. Okay, guys, we've come to the end of the call. I just want to say a big thank you to everyone that joined the call. And you see, Adria Gwemi has already left. I wanted to pass a very important information. So guys, the rest of us that, please don't leave. Spare me 2 minutes. So this is it. We do have, like, if you check your email right now, you must have seen, like, people in product mail showing appreciation for you, like, just to, like, appreciate you for coming to the call right this evening. So we want to get feedback. We want to improve the experience. You know, we want to reflect ourselves in what we are doing. So please always do beyond the 5-star rating that is, like, on that prompt. So go into the prompt itself, like go into the mail itself and give actual feedback, right? So just click on the link that is shared with you inside that mail and, like, just write your feedback. It's very important at this point. We want to be able to grow as a community. We want to be able to, like, extend core values, right? And, like, actual value really to everybody, like, that joins the call every time. So please just make sure you do that for us, and not just today alone, like, even after now, like, continuously. Just always try to, like, give reviews to all of our meetings and all of that, so that we can really, really improve our experience and, like, just give you value. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you for doing the works. I mean, thank you for building for Africa and for the world at large. It's not easy. So thank you, and you're deeply rewarded. Love you all, product managers. Bye, Rija. Thank you.